pop culture, welcome to episode 2 of Everything is Permitted. I'm your host, Julian Brown, alongside my co-host, Matt Reppert. How you doing, man?
Not too bad. How are you?
Good. It's good to be back for episode 2.
Absolutely.
In a few minutes here, we're going to go over our first segment of each and every podcast, the Permitted Minute. But before then, what's been going on these past couple weeks? Anything interesting in the nerd world besides what we have here?
I mean, honestly, I'm kind of waiting for the deluge of video games and movies and such that the fall brings. I mean, I don't know. There's always that very quiet period in the summer when nothing really gets released, and then bam, as soon as fall hits, everything just starts dropping left and right.
So. All the good video games come out in September and October.
Yeah, I know.
You're anxiously waiting Forsaken, the DLC for Destiny.
Yep, I'm probably one of the few. But
I had a hard breakup with that game.
I know you did.
I'm anxiously awaiting next Thursday at midnight for Spider-Man PS4.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Oh, I can't wait. And then we'll be talking about it in a couple episodes, but Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh, yeah.
In October. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That looks so good. Also, I think this happened in between episodes. You and I both got the Best Buy exclusive Deadpool 2 Steelbook.
Yep. Yeah, I'm always suckered into buying the Steelbooks. I love them, even though I'm like paying $35 for it. But I think, as you said in the previous episode, like they pulled you back in.
They're so nice. They're just really nice. And this one's like so funny with the cartoon of him, and like I like being on top. It's total.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Wade Wilson Deadpool. You said you got a chance to watch the movie, and
yeah, I did. I didn't get to see it in theaters, and my wife and I watched it, and we really enjoyed it. I mean, it's more Deadpool, and I loved the first movie, and I loved this movie.
What did you think of I'm gonna totally Josh Brolin as Cable there?
I liked him a lot. However, part of me in the back of my mind kept thinking Thanos, and because obviously that's his biggest role in the Marvel universe.
And of course he says, "Whatever, Thanos."
But I mean. And he was fine in the role. I had no problems with him, and I enjoyed him. He did what he needed to do to play Cable.
He did. You mentioned to me, and I enjoyed this a lot as well. The end where Wade goes back into his past.
Oh my God!
Spoiler alert! If you haven't seen Deadpool 2 yet, he uses Cable's time travel device to go and right all of Ryan Reynolds' wrongs, basically.
Yeah, the whole thing when he shot himself reading the script at Green Lantern, I don't think I've laughed that hard in a movie in quite some time.
I thought that was great, and even better than that for me, because Wolverine is my favorite superhero. So seeing him go back to the X-Men Origins, Wolverine and shoot himself again, shoot the really butchered, horrible version of Wade Wilson Deadpool in X-Men Origins. Was just fantastic.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Steelbooks aside, I think the next Steelbook I'm getting is, I shouldn't say aside, is Solo. I don't think you'll be picking that one up.
No, I'll be picking it up because I have I haven't gotten the prequel trilogy yet, but it's coming at some point. I'll probably get it before the end of the year, but I have Steelbooks of every Star Wars movie that has been released.
I'm debating doing it, but I have them all already, except Clone Wars. But those are apparently really expensive.
Yeah, they are. Actually, speaking as someone, because I own pretty much all except for the very last season of Star Wars Rebels, which I've really enjoyed, and I've never watched the Clone Wars series except the actual hand-drawn one that
the original one
did.
Yeah.
I did watch that years ago when it first aired.
Wait, that was Darren Aronofsky?
No, Gennady Tartakovsky.
Okay.
The guy who did Dexter's Lab and all that. Yep.
Yeah, and the Samurai Show, right? He did.
Samurai Jack. Samurai Jack. Yeah.
Yep.
I never got the chance to watch the original Clone Wars cartoon, and I've heard mixed things about it, and some clips I've seen kind of make me grind my teeth with the Ahsoka character when she's younger.
I think with these shows like Rebels and Clone Wars, the biggest complaint, and I think we might get some of that in Resistance, is that the first seasons kind of start off kiddie and a little slow and a little cheesy, but then the seasons after those seem to really pick things up and get really good into the Star Wars that we know and love.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, the thing is that unlike, apparently a lot of people in nerd culture, you have to realize that it's made for children and you're not a child. You can enjoy it, Absolutely. I've enjoyed many children's shows that are ostensibly made for children. I just started watching Gravity Falls, which is a
Is that any good?
Actually, it is. I've watched the first 2 episodes and I'm really enjoying it. But, once again, it's a show made for kids, but I'm still enjoying it. And that's what people kind of sometimes forget is that, you're not 12, you're not 13,
Well, speaking of people doing childish things, because we will be getting into that into the permitted minute, it is time for the permitted minute.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. And your time starts now.
I give you 60 seconds, Admiral.
Matt Smith has been cast in a key role in Star Wars Episode 9. This news has sparked speculation that Grand Admiral Thrawn will show up once again.
In more Star Wars news, the first trailer for Disney's new animation show, Resistance, featuring Poe Dameron and other ace pilots, debuted.
Reddit warriors this week accused Insomniac Games of downgrading next week's Spider-Man PS4 release because they changed the size of a puddle.
Jesus.
Season 1 of Amazon's new Jack Ryan series is now available to stream via the Prime Video app. Let's hope it's worth, the year and a half of hype.
Marvel Studios' Kevin, is it Feige or Feige? I never know.
Feige
will be awarded the Producers Guild of America's highest honor, the David O. Selznick Award. Previous recipients include Jerry Bruckheimer, Clint Eastwood, Kathleen Kennedy, and Steven Spielberg. Also, Alec Baldwin, who was slated to play Thomas Wayne in The Batman, has dropped out of the film, stating, "I'm sure there are 25 guys who can play that part." We did it.
Yes.
We're 1-1.
Yes,
We're 1-1.
absolutely. We're going to put that on the board.
We are. It's on the board, 1-1, and maybe we'll be even faster or slower next week.
Absolutely.
All right. We have another great show for you planned this week. When we come back, I sat down with our resident X-Wing experts from Wade's Comic Madness, Bryan and Alex, and we talk all about X-Wing 2nd Edition, what it's changing, what's new, what to expect, and all the fun things about those miniature games. Also, at the end of our show, our main subject, we dissect, tear apart, debate, discuss IGN's top 25 superhero, not comic book, superhero movies of all time. All that and more when we come back. Stick around.
Lock S-files and attack positions.
Welcome back to Everything is Permitted, and I am now joined by Bryan Becker and Alex Makaryk. They are our resident experts on X-Wing at Wade's Comic Madness. They may agree, they may disagree. I like to think of them as our X-Wing experts.
I guess we're the closest you've got, so...
Yeah, we're pretty all right.
I mean, I've learned a lot from you, Bryan, specifically about the game. For those of you not familiar with X-Wing, X-Wing is a very popular tabletop game with miniatures, like the Millennium Falcon and X-Wing, and it's basically a game where you fulfill your fantasies of being Luke Skywalker doing the trench run, attacking other ships in dogfights. If you miss Rogue Squadron games like that, and you want to do it in a tabletop style, this is the game for you. Would you say that's pretty accurate?
Yeah, I think one thing to emphasize in the game is a tactical miniatures game. Ship placement and kind of outthinking your enemy is a very fundamental part of the game, and you really want to hammer that home because that's what makes the game good.
Yeah, positioning is everything. It's really more about the positioning of the ships, and since you're on a free-form open board, you're not playing with hexes, you're not playing with squares that you're moving around on where, okay, I take 2 spaces forward. I've had games literally come down to the millimeter of, are you technically within range of this ship? I can fit a piece of paper in there, and now you can't hit me.
And before we get started, one of the things that I've enjoyed, I'm still very new to the game, is those moments when you precisely get your ship where you want it and are able to do one of those great attacks. It's a great feeling.
Mm-hmm. It's also not a great feeling
when it happens.
When it happens to you.
So, Fantasy Flight Games is putting out the 2nd edition of X-Wing September 14th? 13th. 13th. Yes. A lot of big changes happening, and I think one of the biggest refined aspects of the game that FFG did announce is the refocus on the act of actually flying your ships and making that more fine-tuned. Alex, I'll start with you. What's changed there, and we'll go to Bryan after.
I think the big change in terms of kind of qualifying actually flying your ships is the removal of 360 arcs. That was something that was introduced very on in X-Wing First Edition. I think Wave 2?
Wave 1.
Wave 1, okay.
Yeah, the Y-Wings had them.
Oh, the Y-Wings had them. Yeah, of course. I was thinking the Millennium Falcon. But yeah, very early on in the game, and they led to a situation where, you didn't necessarily have to worry about positional advantage or, manipulating your opponent's movement towards what's best for you kind of situations. You could just skirt around on the board and just plink, 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 and that was a viable and really effective strategy for certain ships and combinations. It was also easy to play and kind of gives the illusion that the game is not as rewarding tactically as it actually is. So those are gone. Just gone. They're kind of still there in a adjusted setting. A couple of waves ago when they released the Shadowcaster, which is I think it's from Rebels.
Yeah.
I know it was in Rebels. I don't know if they
is that like the Dash Rendar type ship, like the Outrider, or is it was something a little bit different?
It actually looks very Star Trek-ish.
Yeah, it looks like the Defiant from
it's
Deep
a
Space
disc.
Nine.
It's a disc with 2 nacelles on the outside. It looks like
the Defiant. And what they did with that ship, they introduced a
mobile arc,
a mobile firing arc. And when they introduced that, pretty much everyone who's like active in the X-Wing community said, they really should have done this from the beginning because, you do have to move the arc. You do have to choose which way you're going to be shooting, and the opponent can outfly you in that context. So those are going to be basically any original ship that had some sort of arced weapon or like turreted weapon, either a turret upgrade slot or a primary weapon turret is now going to be, that mobile firing arc that you can adjust and reposition mid-game.
Bryan, is there anything that you wanted to add as far as the kind of this refocus on maneuvering your ships and getting them onto the table?
Alex hit most of it, but the only thing I will say, and this is something that'll probably be a theme throughout most of this discussion, is this is the first miniatures game, like a true miniatures game that X-Wing or that Fantasy Flight's ever done. They've certainly had their share of games involving miniatures, but this is the most traditional one. And there's a lot of mistakes that they made without necessarily realizing it. So in the first wave, which is where the turrets were first introduced, the only turrets they had, I believe, were the ion turret and maybe one other. And in those cases, the turrets didn't do a whole lot. You could use them to augment your attacks. You would have your X-Wings flying around, taking your shots at your TIE fighters. But the Y-Wings could get a very weak front shut off. The turrets would just be something that could ionize them, which didn't do any damage, but it just meant that they sort of drifted for the next round. I think Fantasy Flight didn't like the fact that people weren't using the turrets. They just weren't powerful enough. They didn't really do a lot. But on the whole, they were being foregone for other upgrades and other ships. So the biggest change came with the release of the twin laser turret, which came out with the K-Wing. Now suddenly you had a turret that could do significant damage. It all but guaranteed 2 hits per shot per round. And there's very little you could do to avoid it because it was a 3-die attack. You got to do it twice. You only need to attack with unmodded dice, and you were probably going to hit. With that, suddenly turrets became the mainstay of the game. Now, you didn't need skill. You needed a ship that could tank, take a few hits, drift in a circle, and just shoot anything that came near it. And it was Fantasy Flight overcorrecting one direction. People weren't using turrets. Too much into the other direction. Well, now that's all people wanted to use with turrets. You don't need to fly your ships anymore. Just fly in a circle and throw dice at each other, and whoever gets the best rolls is going to win the game.
Which seems no fun for anyone.
It wasn't.
No.
Most shops, most people who played for friends and stuff, you wouldn't use that because it was a really boring, tedious game. But if you needed to win a tournament, you threw a bunch of turret ships out there, and you saw that list again and again and again and again.
So it's nice, at least I guess from what you guys are taking from that, Fantasy Flight noticed that and changed that significantly.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of this as we talk about it. It's things that Fantasy Flight learned over 6 years of putting this game out, of constantly overcorrecting in one direction, not realizing that they broke something when they did it, and then trying to fix that with a future upgrade and breaking it further in the other direction. They just fishtailed their way through this entire 14 waves of ships.
Yeah. Part of what they also announced is, along with, I guess it's part of like the measuring stick, to make sure you're in range, is this new bullseye arc. They've also announced red actions, and maybe I'm wrong because I haven't actually played with Y-Wings. I've played with the Millennium Falcon and a lot of the First Order stuff, like the Kylo Ren's TIE Fighter, First Order Special Forces TIE Fighter. I guess the Y-Wing has a reload feature. So I don't know if that's new or not. But go ahead.
It's not new to the game. It's new to a lot of ships. This again comes with the learning curve that Fantasy Flight's been on. They started off and they had a good idea of what they wanted to do. You have ships go out and they're using their kind of archetypal ships of the X-Wing, the Y-Wing. They're two of the most identifiable ships on the Rebel forces, with the Falcon coming in as one of the next ships up. And then you TIE Fighters, the TIE Advance, and such. Later on, as they got more experience and they wanted to add new wrinkles into the game, on one of the last waves, they had the Kimagilla Fighter, which they created this bullseye arc. And suddenly had this idea of, if you're not using a turret, you just have a 90-degree front arc. But what if you were even better than that, and you could get your opponent lined up dead middle of your shot?
This is the bullseye arc.
And it became the bullseye arc. Maybe if you were that good, you get a little bit of a bonus. So they really liked the idea of it. There was just nothing it sort of worked with. And all the other ships had been built without the idea of it on the piece that you use, so you couldn't really retrofit it. Now that they're starting from scratch, even if a ship doesn't need the bullseye arc, it's there just in case you want to use it for certain types of ordnance would use it, or certain types of skills will use it.
Kind of tying it, all these three things together, like fundamentally, the game was around for 6-7 years. A lot of developments, a lot of improvements were done, and those developments and improvements were not necessarily applied retroactively. The bullseye arc, they didn't apply that one to previous ships because, they couldn't resell the cardboard pieces. Right. The reload action on the Y-Wing couldn't apply that retroactively because you gotta put out the new cards with all that information on it. And there's a lot of instances of that throughout like the history of X-Wing. Just good ideas that they had too late.
Yeah, exactly.
Even the charge tokens are a big thing. Fundamentally, that is not a new element in this game. It's just being applied more aggressively in more spaces.
And we're going to get into that, but like charge tokens, like specifically like what's going on with the Force in second edition.
That's
something a little bit
different.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty new design space. Well, we'll go over that in a minute, yeah. But like charge tokens fundamentally are just like the extra munitions tokens or the illicit tokens or any number of tokens that did the same thing in first edition but were more specialized or unique.
And you could tell that Fantasy Flight kind of like, wish we had thought of this at the original version of it, because an X-Wing doesn't have just one proton torpedo on it. It has two. Mm-hmm. But they didn't have a way to kind of do that. It was you used it and you flipped the card and now it's gone. And then when they came up with the idea of the extra munitions, it was, now you can have two of them. You have a way to spend it without fully spending it, removing it. You mentioned the reload action. They did put that onto the Alpha Starwing. And it was the whole point of the ship is that it runs around firing missiles. It's not a ship that uses its main guns. But if your ship can only hold 2 missiles or a torpedo or something, your ship's going to end very quickly. It just won't be useful. So they had the idea of, now you can reload. There's a cost to it. You can't attack that round. You have to kind of take a moment to back off and prep. But it was there. And then, again, you could kind of almost feel the wheels turning at Fantasy Flight saying, yeah, but we had so many other bombers, and we have so many other missile boats, and none of those could do it. I wish we had done it with those as well, with the Punisher, with the Bomber, with the Y-Wing. That's their whole point, is to be throwing ordnance out there. You don't send a Y-Wing out to shoot its puny little front laser. You shoot it out there to drop bombs and fire missiles and use its turret. But no one was doing that with the Y-Wing. In fact, no one was using the Y-Wing.
And now it's basically been, with the reload feature, it's more...
It has a whole new life.
Yeah. Speaking of whole new life, the Force, I guess the Force was part a little bit, barely, of...
Not
not even...
in abstract.
Flavor, exactly, in abstract. Good. Yeah, that's the correct term for it.
So then this is accurate. It's going to have a huge role in
Massive.
second edition,
Yes.
especially with characters like Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader. So they'll have this option called Force Charges at the beginning of each game. I guess, you guys have been playing X-Wing a long time. Well, how long have you been playing X-Wing, Alice?
Ooh, probably about 4-ish years.
4
now.
years, Brian.
6 years.
6
We
years.
have
So you've both
one-
been
I
playing
literally
a
got
very
it when it came out.
You've both been playing a very long time. Do you believe that it belongs in the game, or should it be saved for games like I play Star Wars Destiny? Do you think like with upgrade cards, something like that,
100%
work?
belongs in the game.
I mean, so like Luke Skywalker, no one used him because his Force ability, or he didn't really have anything that really defined him as a Force user, except for his pilot ability, which wasn't really that good. I mean, there were other kind of Force-sensitive characters throughout the game that had better pilot abilities, but they weren't necessarily... They didn't invoke that kind of grand nature that you're supposed to feel when you talk about Star Wars and the Force. So, there was nothing magical or interesting there. It was just this pilot can do something a little different. Which...
Yeah, but every pilot can do something a little bit different. So you run into things like you have Luke, who is supposed to be this Force user. He's supposed to be able to have all these benefits from it. And yet Wedge Antilles was by far a better pilot than him.
Absolutely. Every time.
It was no question. And then you had Darth Vader, who, the strongest Force user there is, was supposed to have this amazing ability with the Force. And it turned into a really good ability. I mean, Darth Vader was a strong pilot at the time. But if you had Wedge with a better bid, Wedge could outfly him. And there was no reason for that. The advantage of being a Force user wasn't really shown. It was just sort of like, here's something, and we're going to say that he gets that because it was part of the Force. But every unique pilot has something, and less than 10% of them are Force users. So where is the Force kind of being represented there? And it wasn't.
From everything that I've read, it seems like it is going to be something like pretty special, like with these Force charge tokens. And I've read something possibly about like being able to peek at your opponent's dial and kind of get an idea of where they're going to move on the board.
The way it works is with the pilots in general. Once you hit a certain level and you're considered an ace, they'll be giving you talent cards that you can get. And those talent cards might be trick shot, being able to shoot past obstacles a little better, or there's a large variety of them. But if you're a Force user, you don't get to use any of those. You have your own special grouping of Force cards, one of which is the ability to peek at an opponent's card. Now, there is a crew member that can do that as well, a non-Force using crew member. If you have an informant, you can use that to look at someone else's card as well. So it's
Dial.
not, or Dial as well, yeah. It's not overpowered, and it's certainly not something you couldn't get without a Force user, but it's a much better version of it. You also have a version of...
It's also not a new element to the game.
Sure.
Intel Agent has been in first edition for a extremely long time. I don't even know how
I wouldn't guess.
Like third wave or something like that.
Yeah. But then there's an ability like Supernatural Reflexes, which in a lot of ways mimics another card called Advanced Sensors. It just allows you to do an action before you reveal once you reveal your dial, but before you do the maneuver. It limits those actions to either boosting or barrel rolling, whereas Advanced Sensors, anything you can do, you can do.
I got to use Advanced Sensors a lot when you helped me with that when I was playing Kylo, and it was a really great feature, especially with his nimble starfighter. It worked perfectly.
Now they've also nerfed that in second edition because Advanced Sensors was too good. But
it seems like
it was one of those cards, and it's something else I'm sure we'll get into. But it was one of those cards that pretty much everyone took, and it just it's one of the things Fantasy Flight wanted to do is reduce the number of cards, but make those cards all viable cards. The other thing that the Force can do is pretty much every Force user has some sort of power that uses those Force charges as well as the ability to get Force talents. So in the first edition, Darth Vader was just always able to take 2 actions. Everyone else gets 1 action, he gets 2. That's him using the Force. Now he actively has to use the Force. He gets his action, but after that he can spend his Force charges to get additional actions. And if you have any Force charges left over, you can use them to modify your dice to improve your chances of hit or defend. So it does kind of pay to not blow your Force on using it on abilities or actions, but still keep them in reserve. And then you also always get 1 Force charge back at the start of every turn.
Yeah, I read that too. That just
sort of. I mean, only certain I think pretty much all the
every Force user does.
Every spoiled Force user does. Okay, cool. Because they did specify that not necessarily everything could recharge.
Right. Going back to what you're saying about them being sort of like charges. In a lot of cases, the charges on things, which are separate tokens, but sometimes function similarly. There's an icon on them that says at the end of the turn, go ahead and recharge one charge. As far as I know, every Force user gets to recharge their Force.
I saw specifically too that the Force charges are listed. They're like a purple symbol on the card, like they're actually on the card.
And if it's something that recharges, there will be a small purple triangle next to that as well. That indicates that this is something that recharges.
We talked about this as we were talking about the show before we recorded over Messenger today, about how another huge change to the game. Lists have now gone from a usual 100-point standard. Now they're going to be a 200-point standard. How much does that change the game?
Not as much as you would think. What shifting to kind of a 200-point standard play does is allows for more granularity in pricing. So, lists are going to be built at 200 points, but everything has functionally doubled in points cost. So, a Red Squadron X-Wing is like 23 or something points. Now that's more like 46. So quantity of ships in the game is not going to change, but that extra granularity allows the game designers more space to adjust, the cost of things, which they can also do kind of live now, which we'll go into when we talk about the app.
Alex said it all. I mean, that's all there is to it. It's granularity. There were times where they, it's like, well, 2 points is too much for that upgrade, but 1 point isn't enough. Right. So let's make them cost 4 points, but that one's going to cost 3.
I was going to talk about factions, but that actually seems like a nice segue. FFG is really hyping their companion app and squad builder for 2nd edition. It seems like it might be a welcome addition.
Yes, I've played with a little bit at Gen Con. It's pretty well designed. It's kind of generic Unity style app, so it's not bad, but it's not anything like exquisite in terms of functional design or yada yada. It works, but what it does allow them is the ability to dynamically change elements of the game without having to do anything really dramatic. There were times in 1st edition where there were fundamental game design issues that they had to resolve, sometimes with the cost of a particular upgrade or even a ship, that they had to wait for a release of a product to actually affect that sort of change in some sort of way. Kind of I guess the easiest one to explain was A-Wings. A-Wings were always kind of overcosted, and it took them a while to release a upgrade card that discounted the A-Wings. Now they can just do that on the fly. They also have a lot of granularity in terms of pricing.
So let me just interrupt you real quick, because you're saying that without having to re-release, if I'm getting you right, a new card or something, they could just say, hey, we're updating this in the app, and
to give you a little back information on it. In 1st edition, if you picked up a card, if you went into your collection and grabbed, an X-Wing or whatever, it had all the information on the card. It had the pilot skill of it. It had the agility. It had what upgrades were available to that card. With an X-Wing, you're going to get a torpedo slot. You're going to get a talent slot, and the cost of the card. That's all printed on it. Well, Fantasy Flight's not coming to your house and erasing those cards. Right. They certainly weren't going to pay to have new cards issued as much as people wanted them to. So their response, again, was sometimes to overcorrect. If they made something too expensive, the TIE Advanced was another huge one where people were like, great ship, love to play Darth Vader. It's a terrible ship, and for what it costs, I can't put enough of on the board. So they had to do things to release other cards that would be titles, maybe. That would be, okay, here's the title for this card, and it's a negative point title. It actually costs less points to put it on because it was too expensive to put it out. So here's something you can put on that's free and cheap, but you have to buy another upgrade to do it. In the TIE Advance's case, all you have to do is buy a $100 Imperial Raider that you couldn't use in the regular game to get these cards. With the new version with the app, the points are no longer on the cards. The card will give you the basic information, it'll give you the pilot's abilities, but it won't tell you how much the card is worth, and it won't tell you what upgrades can go onto that ship. That's all handled by the app now. So now they can say, man, no one's using the TIE bomber. I wonder why. Well, in asking around, looking on the forums, they're too expensive. We shouldn't have cost the TIE bomber at 65 points. You can only put 3 of them on the board. That was dumb of us. Let's make it 24 points and see if people can now put them on and make them worthwhile. They can also look at it and say, well, we shouldn't have given this ship a droid, or we shouldn't have given it 2 illicit slots, or we did too much to it. Let's start scaling it back. Something that they did with only one ship, the Jumpmaster, which was so absurdly overpowered that when it came out, everyone at tournaments just flew 3 Jumpmasters.
It took, I think, 5 or 6 FAQ attempts to actually bring the thing down, and they never really got it down that far. It's still a very good ship.
So this is their learning curve, going to other games like Games Workshop, where with Games Workshop you don't get the cards. You buy a book every season, and the book has the costs so that they can adjust for these things. But this way, Fantasy Flight can adjust between tournaments. The other thing that they're doing with the app is they're going to start doing, you can do tournaments on a limited basis. So you can say, look, we're going to have either a store competition or a Fantasy Flight sanctioned competition, but we're going to do it with the Battle of Yavin. The only thing you can fly are ships that are directly from the Battle of Yavin.
That's really cool.
And you can put it in and say, okay, everyone, go, Julian, here's the list. Go ahead and go online. And it won't even let you pick cards or pilots that weren't available within that specified list. So you can make so much more interesting tournaments where it's not a free-for-all of every ship, where someone like me who has had 6 years of collecting and a pretty massive collection goes up against someone like you who's just getting into the game. Well, I have a distinct advantage over you, and money should not be the thing that lets you win this game. You should be able to go out and spend $100, get a good list, get a good bunch of ships, and be able to compete, not just by being able to buy your way into it.
So let's actually talk about that, because this is another thing that we talked about before we start.
Go ahead. I just want to mention one other thing about the app that I feel is going to be really valuable for game design and game longevity. In terms of adjusting point costs, they can actually do that on a very kind of pointed basis. Like, they can adjust the point cost for a upgrade on a particular ship, not just a global point reduction. So if one upgrade is too good on one particular ship because of whatever, the dial or some other combination of dark magic that makes it so strong, they can just make that upgrade a little bit more expensive for that ship. And that upgrade is still very good on other ships, but now not as good on that particular ship.
Yeah, this ship is too dangerous with this particular turret. We don't want to take turrets off the ship because that wouldn't make sense. And we don't want to take this turret and make it too expensive that no one could use it. But on this one ship, we're really going to crush the points on it because we were tired of seeing this ship with this turret dominating.
So it really does sound like the app's going to be a great tool for new players and veteran players alike.
Yeah, and it's going to fix a lot of those balancing issues that they've struggled with, and then they've overcorrected with, and then overcorrected the other way with. It really helps solve a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. Bryan, you were talking about how a player shouldn't have to go and spend a ridiculous amount of money on an expansion to get, this card or this card to have an advantage. The overall cost of the game is going up. Now, is that basically because the game is becoming less pay to play, or, instead because you're getting everything you need with the ships that you buy, or what's the reasoning behind that?
It's actually not going up significantly.
I think it's just because of inflation.
Yeah, the only price increase is the cost of the small base ships. Previously, they were generally all $15. Now they're going up to $20. MSRP.
Right.
But as a whole, the game isn't getting much more expensive. The core set is still $40. The original core set 6 years ago was $40. The quality of the sculpts has actually improved, though. The Y-Wing, I've seen the new Y-Wing. It's gorgeous. The Fang Fighter, the previous one, it was a static, very nice little ship. The new one, apparently, the wings on it move and actually spin like they are supposed to.
I literally am pre-ordering the Lando Millennium Falcon because it just looks beautiful. But you also convinced me now just to get more Scum and Villainy stuff. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, the X-Wings now, the ability to open the S-foils, that's something that everyone clamored for in the beginning, and Fantasy Flight said, well, we can't do that. I mean, do you know how difficult it would be to make a ship that actually moves
That's
and does
small,
stuff?
too.
Yeah.
Well, for $5 extra, now you're going to get an improved model that has opening S-foils. And so, yeah, it's a little more expensive, but you're getting something for it. And honestly, if the $5 is the difference and you want to get a cheaper ship, there's a lot of them out there right now that you can still pick up and first edition ones, or people getting rid of their sets, and there are ways to get it cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of the old edition ships, there are Fantasy Flight is releasing conversion kits for previous collections. Are they worth it? And you're talking about going back and buying some of the older ships, or is it worth it for people to just who have
your
old
situation.
sets, to buy?
There is no blanket answer for that. For you, getting into it, no, absolutely not. Come into the game, second edition, start fresh. I don't even want to estimate how much money I've spent on the game and how many ships. Yeah. The conversion kits work very, very well for me. For the cost of $50, per faction, I can convert over several $100 worth of ships. Right. And it's a real easy transition. And in fact, Fantasy Flight did a pretty good job of estimating how many ships kind of the average user would have. My collection, in many cases, matches up perfectly to what they do. I'm a little annoyed that they don't give you 4 X-Wings, but...
Can't have it all.
Yeah.
They also did a really good job of pricing these conversion kits, like in terms of just dollar value. Like, you're getting a lot for your money on these conversion kits. And they're not, like, trying to kind of nickel and dime you out of these. These feel like they're pretty much at cost. Something like 70 pilots in each conversion kit.
70, 80.
You're getting
upgrades.
Everything you need.
Yeah,
everything you need.
The stack of upgrade cards you get with it is about 1.5 inches tall.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a deck of cards.
And then all the dials for the ships. Like,
it's 100% a great investment for you guys.
Sure. Yes. The trick is going to come to the mid-range players. Someone who's been playing for the last 2 years has 15 Imperial ships, but still wants to play Imperials. Is it worth spending $50 to upgrade those 15 ships? You're kind of getting into a weird spot there. Or if you only have like 10 or so, maybe not. Though I do anticipate on eBay, there are going to be people who buy the conversion kits, break them up. You're not going to get the same value. You're not going to be able to buy it for, 1/50th the cost to buy one ship. But you might be able to pick up, 3 X-Wings for $10 or something. And then if you only have a few of the ships, you can break them apart, get the pieces you need. There's rumors, and it's only rumors and speculation, that eventually Fantasy Flight will release single ship upgrade kits as well. Cool. But if you're going to your friendly local store and playing, find a group. Maybe you guys can split conversion kits. I mean, me and Alex are talking about we're going to buy some kits and like, hey, I need an extra one of these. I've got plenty of the pilots. I just need one more dial for my interceptors. Right. I just need, one here. Hey, I've got an extra B-wing. Does anyone need the B-wing dial? Let's just swap these out. Because you need the chits that fit on the base. It may not be feasible to say, okay, I'm just going to trade you enough for one of these ships. You might need all of them. But one dial you could probably do.
Yeah.
So...
And they are going to be releasing second edition in a few waves. So I'm getting some Wave 1 stuff, and I'm waiting for, I believe it's Wave 2, for the Resistance and First Order conversion kits that are going to be coming
And they're also going to be doing Wave kits as well, which is a very interesting thing. So anytime going forward they release like a major wave with a lot of ships that are previously in First Edition, any new pilots or upgrades that are in those waves, you can just buy a wave conversion kit which will have all those cardboard and cards in them. So you don't even have to buy, in the future you don't have to buy the plastic ships for the upgrades for your old plastic ships that you already have. So that'll be nice.
As it stands now, the conversion kit will give you everything that's in Wave 1 and most of what's going to be in all future waves for the existing ships. but there's a very good chance that, hey, we kind of would have liked to put this pilot out, or something else has come up with the new, the Resistance is the new...
They're getting an A-Wing.
There's a new show coming up on Disney. I think.
I've seen the new ship.
So
but it's called Resistance, isn't it?
That's what I'm saying. The Resistance. So there's going to be ships that are going to appear in there, just like they did in Rebels, where they might want to say, "Oh wow, this new pilot, someone's going to want to play that A-Wing pilot." Well, we got to put that out. We've got to find a way to get those into play. Even with this new. With the conversion kits, they're putting stuff out that was never previously released.
But it's still better than having to do what you did with the first edition, really having to just buy a bunch of different things to get what you need.
It's by far better. And it also means with these coming waves, they've gotten away from the idea that you have to buy a ship just for the upgrades. The K-Wing came with the twin laser turret I mentioned earlier. It, for a long time, was the only way to get it. You couldn't buy K-Wings. People were buying them up just to take that one card out, and then they didn't use the ship sometimes. Once they had the first
example is auto thrusters in the Starfighter.
Yes.
Where people would only buy the Starfighter for the 2 auto thrusters cards that came in it. Because that was the only way up until the TIE Silencer that you could get auto thrusters. And that was
And the U-Wing, which was known as the Expertise expansion. So...
We're running out of time here a little bit. I do want to touch on this because this is important, and we'll just get some brief answers on this real quick. Fantasy Flight, along with 2nd edition, is also separating the Resistance and First Order away from Empire and Rebellion. They are going to be their own.
And they're also adding New Republic and Confederate independent systems.
So you'll have Clone Wars as well.
Yes.
Right.
Is this a good thing? Does it make the field to play wider, or does it complicate things?
I think it's a good thing, but not for a reason anyone's really considered. One of my kind of ongoing complaints with FFG and X-Wing is their model for releasing 2 waves a year. So, you get 2 batches of new ships every year, and that led into a situation where we're running out of ships in Star Wars.
Yeah, they're digging deep for some of them.
Yeah, and rumor has it that complaint came from an LFL employee who Lucasfilm Limited, and that was kind of a kick in the butt for them to kind of do 2nd edition, bring back all these famous and great Star Wars ships and make them playable and viable again. And I think what having now 7 factions is going to do is they're not going to have to stick with that 2 wave a year model for every faction.
Right.
They won't be able to, in fact.
Right.
Yes, because that's 28 ships a year. That's just way too many ships. So they'll probably do kind of short waves, I guess is the way to call it, where it'll be this will be a Clone Wars wave in the first part of the year, and then a sequel trilogy wave in the next part of the year, and yada, yada, yada. It won't necessarily be, everything in one wave. It'll be much smaller, more spread out.
What I'm anticipating for the next 5 years is we're going to see, here's a new Resistance First Order ship, here's a new Clone and Republic ship, and here's an old Imperial and Rebel or Scum ship. Because they have 7 years of ships that they have to catch back up on 2nd edition. Yeah. So they're going to be releasing them. I know what's coming out. We've all seen it.
Right.
They're not going to be releasing any more ships from the Galactic Civil War era. There's no reason to. We kind of have all those, and as I said, they've been scraping deep to find new ships to put in there. But now they can put other stuff out, and they have these 2 other pools.
With new content coming out. Because we
on
have...
both sides of it,
Yes.
Because with the release, that since Clone Wars is coming back, that's another...
And we might see some new stuff in there. You never know.
And the other reason, I think that's a big reason also why they separated out the First Order and the Resistance. And this was something I always said back when people would say in First Edition, why don't they release the clones? Why don't they... Because where do the clones fit? Previously, the First Order was an Imperial group. Are clones Imperials?
Depends on who you ask.
Technically, they are. But the clones are also the good guys of the group. And,
you don't want them all of a sudden being stormtroopers.
Yoda fought with the clones, so if you put out his fighter... Now, is Yoda fighting as an Imperial ship? Well, obviously you can't have that either, so they didn't fit anywhere. By pulling out the First Order and pulling out the Resistance, you're now saying, well, we don't care. No one has to match up with anybody. Now, yeah, whatever, clones, who cares what your personal ethics of them are? They're the Republics. They fight. They do whatever they want. And if they're fighting the Imperials or they're fighting the Rebels, who cares? You're using an alternate reality thing anyway. But you're never going to have to worry about seeing who is this Rebel ship going to be fighting alongside. I mean, yeah, Anakin fighting alongside Darth might be interesting. But it doesn't make sense.
It all sounds... Well, I mean, we were talking about this earlier. We got to go. But possibly doing Millennium Falcon alongside Slave One because Lando's, you know...
And in that case, it works out.
Yeah, it's a little strange. Guys, I'm super excited about Second Wave. I can't wait to play with you guys. I think it's going to be great. Bryan, Alex, thank you for coming on. Really quick, Alex, you have a big event coming up, so I thought I'd let you do a little plug.
We got Store Champs coming up for X-Wing over at Wade's Comic Madness. It's going to be the last first edition event I ever do, which is, closing a book and opening a brand new book with much more exciting information in it. So yeah, that's coming up.
Awesome. Bryan, Alex, thank you. When we come back, Matt, Karyn, and Rick join us. We are going to be tearing apart and giving our very solid opinions on IGN's top 25 superhero movie list. Stick around.
The Chitauri are coming. Nothing will change that. What have I to fear?
The Avengers. That's what we call ourselves. Sort of like a team. Earth's mightiest heroes type thing.
Yes, I've met them.
Tony Stark pouring a drink right before the Chitauri come and try to blow up New York. I'm kind of thinking that Tony Stark is a Scotch guy, or at least I hope he's a Scotch guy, because I don't really see him as a bourbon guy. This is just one of the most epic moments in superhero movie culture. One of the best moments that I like, just because it's pure Tony Stark cockiness from the comics, from the movies, whatever. Pouring a drink right in front of Loki's face, it's just brilliant. And that means we are debating, tearing down, destroying, giving our own very insightful opinions on IGN's top 25 superhero movies of all time. Welcome back to the show. I'm here with my co-host Matt Reppert and my lovely wife, once again joining us as a regular contributor, Karyn Brown, Mother of Dragons. How you will be introduced every single time.
Glad to be here.
Now, guys, we actually talked about this list before we recorded our last segment a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
We actually ran through it and all said, we should tear this apart. We should debate this, and that's what we're doing.
It's a crappy list.
Well, there it is right from the start. Karyn says it's a crappy list. Well, we're going to go 25 down to 1. And I'm going to start with, IGN is going to start with one that actually isn't a bad choice. They picked the 2012 Judge Dredd movie with Carl Urban. I have this on my list. I don't think that you did.
Oh, Matt. No, I had it on my list.
You
it's
did.
number 10 on my list.
Not number 10 on your list. It's 24 on my list. Do we like this spot? This is pretty good. You think it deserves a higher spot?
I think it deserves higher because, I mean, when you see what they did with the Dredd, franchise, because, I mean, let's be honest, it was a joke after Sylvester
100%.
Stallone got his hands on it. This movie brought it back to what Judge Dredd is. Gritty, realistic, violent.
So violent and so good.
Yeah, and I mean, it's, the fact is that, like, they could have done so many weird things with the movie, with the Dredd movie, but he never takes his helmet off, for example, so you never see his face.
I love that about it. We watched this together,
No.
right? No, you didn't watch this with me. That's right. I thought we did.
We never. Yeah, I've not seen it.
No,
so I don't have a good opinion.
No,
on it.
I keep thinking. I think you
kept
were
saying
mad.
we
I think
should
you got
see
mad
it.
that I watched it without
you. Watched it without me, and then I never saw it.
Yeah, this
all your fault.
This was a fantastic film, and it definitely deserves a spot on this list. Moving on to number 24. Now, I feel a little bad here because I made you watch a movie that you hadn't seen yet, so you could have some, I guess, clarity to my list and this list. And I haven't seen this movie, and I don't think Karyn's seen this movie. I could be wrong. Number 24 for IGN is Kick-Ass.
Kick-Ass is a good movie.
Kick-Ass.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while, but I do remember I enjoyed it, and I've actually heard the second movie is fantastic. One person who I know reviewed it basically said that it does the whole superheroes, supervillain battle thing perfectly.
Which is funny because it's a movie that apparently was very good, But Jim Carrey, who starred in it as well, refused to do any promotion of it because it was too violent.
And, from the clips I've seen of it, that it certainly is violent, but I mean, like, I don't know
but
what
that's the whole point. Aren't they rated R superhero movies?
Yeah, that's exactly what they are.
Well, we've seen some really good rated R superhero movies come
absolutely
off of that. So, all right, moving on to number 23. You're going to kill me for this one. Also have never seen Hellboy.
You've never seen Hellboy?
Not even on my list.
I no joke, I have seen both of the movies in theaters when they came out years ago. Don't even know what year they both came out. And honestly, I love Ron Perlman. I love that man. His voice, his presence, like any role he's in, he nails it.
And for anyone who doesn't know Ron Perlman, if you ever watched FX's Sons of Anarchy, he starred in that show.
He's been in everything.
He has been in everything,
and he's done a lot of characters in makeup, and just has a really great presence.
He's not. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And honestly, like, just if you didn't love the man already, he literally, for a Make-A-Wish for a child, he got in the Hellboy makeup and went to the hospital, and the whole getup and everything. I mean, this is years after
I
these
heard
movies.
that story. I read that story.
It's he's just a fantastic human being.
Yep. Moving on to 23. This is a movie that we've all seen and a movie that we all really enjoy. And 22 is Spider-Man Homecoming. That's the most recent one where he's finally been introduced into the MCU.
I believe, Spider-Man Homecoming is number 7 on my list. And, I disagree with IGN putting it so high.
Yeah, I mean, I would put it more up there on the list as well. I thought that it's a really fun movie. They do a really great job. It's probably the first time that I've really loved Spider-Man in a movie. The Tobey Maguire movies are meh.
You didn't come see it with me in theaters because you were kind of wary of like seeing a Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, I've been jaded by Spider-Man movies because especially Spider-Man 3. That was its own sadness. Emo Tobey Maguire.
Oh, come on. You didn't love the dancing? Come on now.
The dancing.
Love it.
Kill me now. But yeah, I mean, I've been jaded by Spider-Man on film. And seeing him in the Avengers and kind of getting a glimpse of, or not in the Avengers, but in
in Civil War.
Civil War.
I make the same mistake all the time. I keep saying Civil War shouldn't have never been a Captain America movie. It should have been an Avengers movie. Yeah. I mean, it was an Avengers movie, let's face it.
Seeing him with the Avengers, though. But seeing him show up is, you get the glimpse, and then I thought it was so much fun. I love the relationship between Tony and Peter that really, just gives you fun glimpses into Tony and into, their kind of that like father-son almost relationship that they have that's really sweet. But it's a good movie.
It's fun.
It's a fun movie. And I mean, honestly, like, let's be totally honest with each other here. Did anybody think that the Vulture could have been made into a realistic, empathetic, like, cool villain?
Yes.
But that's what Marvel does so well, don't they? They make villains that you can
let's be honest here. In the comics, it's a dude running around in
he
a
looks
wingsuit. He looks
ridiculous. Like someone could lay an egg on his forehead.
Man, and they turned him into a genuinely menacing and also, but at the same time, sympathetic villain.
Yeah. I mean, this is someone who has been wronged by, partially the events of something the Avengers inadvertently helped cause. So it's wonderful, and I don't want to stick too much on one movie because we have so much, but I have to say, everybody talks about Spider-Man 2 and Tobey Maguire, but Tom Holland is not only the best Spider-Man we've seen on screen, he's the best Peter Parker. They got the age perfectly right.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's keep going.
Let's keep it going at number 21. This is, I think, almost 3 movies in a row. I got away with Spider-Man Homecoming. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World I also have not seen.
What about, have you seen it, Karen?
You are the only one.
It's Michael Cera, right?
Yes.
I don't like him.
But this is another movie I saw in theaters. I loved it. It was, it captured the frantic energy. Now, I'll be the first to admit I haven't read the graphic novels, comics, whatever you like to call them, for the series, but there was so many like nifty, fun moments in the movie that obviously like harkened to its origins from the comics, from the the graphic novels, whatever. and it was just a fun movie. Like, I loved it. You know, I forget. I think I saw it with a couple other people, and I think I was the only person who walked out of there and genuinely like loved it. And also, Chris Evans is in it.
There you go. Chris Evans is now. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. You said it does come from the comics and it had graphic novels. Is it a superhero movie?
Yes, because some of the fight scenes are pure superhero fodder. Like, people literally, like, at one point he literally gets knocked up into the sky so high you can't hear him. And funny enough, the guy he's fighting with that is, I believe it's Brandon Routh, who plays Superman in Superman Returns.
I tried actually to watch all three of these movies today. I was going to do it. I was just going to marathon them all. And not one of them is on-demand Netflix or Prime without paying.
I think I can help you with Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
All right.
I think I have that at home.
We'll make it happen. So that's number 21. At 21, just for going off our list again, I had Batman Mask of the Phantasm, and you had
Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man 2. And let's briefly, since we were on the subject of Spider-Man, have you watched that movie recently?
Spider-Man 2?
Yes.
I'll admit I haven't.
Okay. I watched it on a bus ride up to Hartford to go to a soccer game. Man, I'm guessing that a lot of people that put this movie on their list, and we're going to talk about it more in just a few minutes, haven't gone back and watched it in a really long time.
Oh no, it has a lot of ridiculous things in it. You know, the talking tentacles that whispered to Dr. Octopus and stuff like that. But the thing is, you have to take movies in the time that they were made. Yeah. You can't always judge them through the modern lens of be like, this is ridiculous. Like, you know, I mean, if you want to look at the original Tim Burton Batman, you can pick that movie apart. You could,
but it's still, I don't know, that movie's still...
And there's something to be said for a movie holding up, you know. It has, you know, over, you know,
especially
10 years or whatever, however long it's been since Spider-Man 2. It hasn't been that long.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's something to say.
Now, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong. This is one that you have not seen.
I have not seen The Crow.
And this is at number 20 on IGN's list. Brandon Lee's The Crow. Obviously a very fateful movie. Brandon Lee was shot and killed during the movie. Accidentally, if you listen to the conspiracy theorists, people killed him on set to get back at something that Bruce Lee, who was his father, did to... Anyway, it's a bunch of crap. They were using stunt guns, and I think one was accidentally loaded, or
it had shrapnel. I think it had something in it that basically was projected out, and it wasn't supposed to be. It was a different type of cartridge or something.
And and unfortunately he was killed during it, and then they went on to just keep making Crow movies, which were all awful besides this one. They should have just stopped. The original Crow, yes or no?
No.
We really should watch this movie, because I think you would really love it.
But does it really...
Yes.
I have trouble with the definition of superhero movie.
This guy literally comes... A crow brings this guy back to life.
And but there are movies where supernatural things happen that are not superhero movies.
Okay, but he's...
I mean, like, you have Kingsman on your list, and I think Kingsman
that's also on this list.
It's James Bond. Yeah. Is James Bond a superhero movie? No.
That depends on the Bond movie we're watching
here. That's the question. I
mean, Moonraker.
I just feel like there's a very broad definition.
I would say that The Crow is 100% a superhero movie. A crow picks at this guy's grave and brings him back to life with supernatural powers. This movie is a mix of gothic awesomeness, rock and roll, heavy metal, and just straight up badassery. If you've never seen The Crow, you have to see it. And maybe I like it and I have it on my list and they have it on their list because of the Brandon Lee situation. I would disagree. I've seen it many times. I think it's fantastic.
All right.
We should have another movie night and watch The Crow.
Absolutely.
Number 19, and this is one that pisses me off and shouldn't even be on the list. I know Matt has it on his list.
Mm-hmm.
Watchmen.
Oh, I hate that movie.
I liked it. I mean,
but were you a Watchmen fan before the movie? Because I feel like
I've only read bits and pieces of the graphic novel that it's obviously that it's from, and I know a lot of people who are huge fans of the graphic novel hate the movie.
See, I was wondering if it was more people who liked the
a lot of the people that I talk about like the
movie
movie because they read the graphic novel and love the movie. Because
most people I know think the opposite. They love the graphic novel and hate the movie.
Oh, I hated that movie. I saw it in theater.
We saw it together, and we both had that same face you're making
now.
It was an hour and a half too long.
It was so
There was
long.
Too much blue penis.
Yes, the naked blue guy. Like, what was that? It's just weird. And boring and
it was boring.
No, you don't like anybody in it, and maybe that's like
that is
I
kind of the point.
I think that's the point.
That's the point, but I don't like movies like that. I
No,
wanted a likable character, and there's nobody in this whole movie that's likable.
No, I mean, and
there's no one to root for.
It's obviously not, everybody's cup of tea, and as I said, I liked it for what it was. I mean, honestly,
so that's actually a good question. What was it for you?
What's that? The whole I mean, I just liked the take on this idea of if superheroes were a real thing, how would they influence? How could they influence things? And you have the basic the Batman character versus literally the God, Dr. Manhattan, who literally with a snap of his fingers pretty much ended the Vietnam War, and won it for the United States. I found the world interesting, and as I said, I like the movie, but I almost wish they were able to explore the world more that it resulted from this.
I just wish that they had I would have liked it better because of this. I wish they had made it a bit shorter and then expanded upon it later on, because it just ran on and ran on and ran on, and it didn't do it for me. It's not on my list anywhere. It is
number 16 on
number
my
16
list.
And number 19 here, so not too big of a difference.
Actually, one thing that I can tell you that I loved about the movie was, I believe, Jackie Earle Haley playing Rorschach.
Yes,
he was excellent in that role, and I loved the Rorschach character.
Playing Rorschach and playing a horrible Freddy Krueger in the Freddy Krueger. Moving on, number 18. This is Karyn is going to debate the hell out of this one. Kingsman: The Secret Service.
Is that the second? Is it the first one or the second?
No, it's the first one. Golden
It's
Circle's the second one.
Listen, I liked Kingsman. I thought the Kingsman movies, I think they're a lot of fun. I just don't think they're superhero movies. I don't see how... I mean, I guess you could draw the comparison of dude with a bunch of gadgets, but they're spy movies. They're... it's a James Bond type. And yeah, they've got a little more wacky, super villain. But I mean, Bond's got a lot of wacky super villain stuff too. So,
But I would debate that James Bond is a superhero. The dude doesn't die, does he? Ever? No. He doesn't die. He's a superhero. These guys...
But he's a dude with gadgets.
And I mean, in the Golden Circle, spoiler alert, in the Golden Circle, Galahad comes back to life. Well, he doesn't necessarily... Yeah, he does. He used the magic thing on his head.
It's not magic, it's technology.
I mean, you're going to make the argument as how is all their tech different from, say, Iron Man or something.
Iron Man's tech, or, even saying, Thor is not technically a god. It's just they're a more advanced civilization.
That's. I always feel like that's just their little way of
I know.
It's not magic or godhood. They're just really advanced.
I don't think that James Bond belongs in a superhero category, and I don't think Kingsman belongs in
This is at number 18 on them, which I think is too high. I had it down at number 23.
And if you are including James Bond,
don't even have it on your list.
There's James Bond.
I will say that I absolutely loved the first Kingsman. You and I just watched The Golden Circle the other night. You fell asleep throughout. I almost don't blame you.
Listen, I'm very pregnant.
That's true.
I fall asleep is very in
pregnant.
everything.
Like I said, mother of dragons, about to give birth to our second dragon in October. The Golden Circle was not very good.
It wasn't as good as the first one.
I would almost say it was bad.
I don't know if I would say it was bad. I thought it was fun. It wasn't as good as the first one, and that's me not having seen the end. So I'll have to let you know when I finally watch the end of it. But it wasn't as good, but it was still good.
Well, we
Anyways,
could
but
debate
it doesn't
that.
deserve to be on this list.
Well, there you
obviously.
go. Number 17, Tim Burton's Batman. We both have this higher on our list.
Yes,
I'm
at
number 6, and you're number
5.
There you go. Karyn, it's been a longer time since you've probably seen this. No?
Not that long,
No.
I don't think. This is the one with Mr. Freeze, right? With Arnold?
No.
Did you just say
God.
that?
Oh, God. Oh, my
Batman
God.
and Robin, isn't it?
That's
Yeah.
you went
Yeah.
from the
I know,
original
I'm
that kind
sorry.
of helped make superhero movies happen to literally
I almost threw up there.
I did too.
Jesus.
The
One
worst
of the worst,
the worst
probably the worst.
Batman
Yeah.
movies ever made. Probably worse than Batman vs Superman. No, this is the one with shame on you. Give me your nerd card with Jack Nicholson playing the Joker
That, yes.
and Michelle Pfeiffer.
No, that was the second
that was second.
one.
as
It was
Catwoman.
just. It was.
Was it?
No, it was.
There's too many
Kim
Batman
Basinger.
Who played Vicky Vale?
Kim Basinger.
That's right.
Basinger.
Kim
Vicky
Basinger.
Vale. This movie was good. I agree with what you were saying earlier that there are parts of it that you can probably pick apart now, or a little bit too much. But for the time, and for 1989, where practical effects were not that great yet, they did a really good job making a believable Gotham.
I mean, let's be honest here. Like, for me personally, what makes the original Tim Burton Batman movie is Michael Keaton. Like, he plays Batman perfectly, Bruce Wayne perfectly. He walks in both roles. A lot of Batman actors I've seen in the later movies, they're either good at Batman or good at Bruce Wayne. George Clooney makes an excellent Bruce Wayne, that playboy, but he's a terrible Batman.
I almost called him Bruce Wayne. George Clooney just had no business being in a movie whatsoever.
I understand. But I mean, as I said,
I see what you mean.
It's like, there are some actors who are almost born to play certain roles. Robert Downey Jr. makes the perfect Tony Stark because he had the substance abuse issues.
I still think that
all of the broken.
I still think that Robert Downey Jr. is not Robert Downey Jr. and that he's actually Tony Stark.
Step from another dimension.
Yeah, that's just me.
And honestly, just a quick thing I'll say about, like, honestly, the first Batman movie perfectly bridged, the kind of gritty, realistic side, but the campy, Batman of the 60s, with Adam West and all that. They made something that bridged those two worlds.
Well, it was a very good bat suit. Like, if you're going from comics to the screen, it was a very good bat suit for the time. They didn't try to make Gotham one of the major cities in the United States of America. It was a backdrop, like a matte painting of a very big Gothic style city. It was just very, very cool. A fantastic movie. Really kind of want to sit down and watch it again soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Tim Burton really made a comic book style. Like, that was his thing.
Absolutely.
Was he wanted to make a comic book on screen. And he was successful at it.
Not only did he make a comic book on screen, he did it twice in a row in 2 successful movies with Batman Returns, which was equally as fantastic. I think a little bit more campier.
Yeah, the marching penguins and all that. We gotta be real here.
Let's be real, but how awesome is that scene though?
Maybe my inner child loves it, but like the adult in me is kind of like rubbing my forehead.
Number 16 on IGN's list is Wonder Woman, a fantastic film. I had it 15, so one higher. I
had it 17.
17, so right around.
We're in the right neighborhood.
In the middle. Karyn, this is, I think, kind of your forte. Higher, lower?
I would probably go a little higher, but maybe not too much. I love Wonder Woman. I was super excited to see it on screen. I think that, looking back at it, having kind of been a little bit since I've seen it, the story is a little bit canned. It's a little bit, it kind of fits in a box. And there's, something to say with, kind of having that, hero story that is recognizable, but at the same time, it doesn't do a ton that's new, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It's the kind of typical generic superhero story.
Yeah.
Good guy versus evil.
Yeah,
you've
got the origin. Yeah.
An origin story.
But at the same time, I mean, Gal Gadot is a phenomenal Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
I was a little worried at first about her. I was like, I don't know. She's not, she didn't, like, when she first was cast, I was like, I don't know. She doesn't seem really powerful to me, and Wonder Woman should be powerful. But, like, she really embodied Wonder Woman in that movie. And I think it really stayed true. All the scenes in Themyscira and with the Amazons were just phenomenal. And, you had some really awesome epic scenes of, Wonder Woman badassery where, she's marching through the trenches. And
one of the coolest scenes in movies ever, I think.
Yeah,
I love that.
Absolutely.
And the music was fantastic.
I will have to, the thing, and I remember we saw this movie together, in fact,
did.
And I remember as soon as we walked out of the theater, I even said, like, the thing that I found most ridiculous about the movie is when, spoiler alert, when Ares reveals himself and he puts on the armor and it's melted weapons and such, and I'm like, this is awesome. And he tears a hole in his helmet and he still has David Thewlis's mustache in his face. I was like, I can't take this guy seriously now. I can't. I'm sorry.
A very good movie. Excited for Wonder Woman 2, which is going to be set in 1984.
I'm excited about that because I'm excited to see what they can do with her when it's not just an origin story.
Yeah.
That's really going to be the test is what they do with her. I mean, she's been great in, she was probably the light spot in Batman versus Superman, and I never saw Justice League because
Nor should you.
It's not good. It's better than Batman Superman, but that is a very low bar to clear.
You took the words out of my mouth, and it is worth noting that Gal Gadot is the only redeeming quality of any of these new DC movies. She is great in Batman vs Superman, and her opening scene in Justice League. I mean, I could have just watched that movie, honestly, and it would have been better than Justice League. But Wonder Woman 2 is coming out. Do you want to say something?
No, I'm good, man.
Moving on to number 15, and I think I also had this just a little bit higher, is the second X-Men movie from Bryan Singer, X2, X-Men United. This is the one where we find out a lot about Wolverine's origins, if you didn't know from reading comics, and as well as the Phoenix Force.
Yeah, I have it number 8 on my list. I remember seeing it in theaters years ago. I loved it. I liked, the idea of there's all these different forces at play because, finally you could say the humans are, kind of throwing their lot into this. I liked the fact the Stryker character was a person.
Yes.
And basically, his backstory about why he hated mutants made sense to me. And I believe he said his wife took a power drill to her head because her son, who had psychic abilities, basically told her to do it. And so that, to me, is a very believable motivation as to why, we should get rid of these things. We should get rid of these people just because they're dangerous. And honestly, the opening scene with Nightcrawler in the White House is probably one of my favorite action movie scenes ever.
I thought at the time, and if I go back and watch the movie now, that Nightcrawler's special effects, him teleporting during that scene, it's just so cool, and it's like one of those you get shivers every time you watch it. Obviously, I'll say it as many times as I want on the show. Wolverine's my homeboy. Them really talking about his origins and how he was made in the Weapon X program, shedding more light on that. And they did a good thing in this movie and then ruined it in the next one. And they hinted at the Phoenix Force and gave Jean Grey these powers, and then X-Men 3, Brett Ratner. Oh, Brett Ratner.
X-Men 3.
Doesn't even deserve to be mentioned on this podcast.
We'll have to do a top. We'll have to do a top worst list.
I think that is happening. Yes, 100%.
Bottom 10.
We are in the top 15. That was my number 11, and you said it was your
number 8.
Number 8. So we are now into IGN's top 15. At 14, they have here it is: Dr. Octopus and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 2. This movie is cheesy. It is all cheese.
Oh, absolutely. But cheese isn't necessarily a bad thing. That's, I have it at number 21, so I actually have it, a little higher on my list. But I mean, for what it did for superhero movies back then, I have to give it its due, and that it's a fun movie, and there's a lot of cheesy campiness to it, but. I think we mentioned earlier about the talking tentacles and all that. They were whispering to Dr. Octopus, and
I'm not gonna say that it didn't help grow superhero movies, because it had. And I don't have this movie on my list. Are we all still kind of familiar? Have it in our heads a little bit? The original X-Men movie with what happens on Liberty Island there. I went back and watched that, not recently. I would say in the past 2 years. And I thought that did more still for superhero movies than Spider-Man 2. That movie still holds up, in my opinion, better than Spider-Man 2.
I mean, obviously we don't want to get into a huge debate about it, but honestly, the original X-Men movie doesn't hold up as well, in my opinion, because, you have, Sabretooth, who is in no way explained in that movie at all. They hinted that, there's this huge backstory between him and Wolverine. But we're not going to talk about it.
Aren't they smart? Wasn't that a move more fans and comic book fans are smart and they know who they are and they know the backstories?
Well, the thing is that you don't ever want to just try to appeal as many people as possible. Yes, there's a certain point where you need to hold up and say, all right, we're not going to just tell you every single thing, but you can't have all these everything a wink and a nod to hardcore comic book fans, because I'm not a big comic book guy, so I cannot tell you anything about Sabretooth or Wolverine's history.
Moving on, and I think, Karyn, this is going to be one that's out of your room. I don't think you ever watched Batman the Animated Series cartoon. You will be soon, because I pre-ordered the Blu-rays, so...
I was about to say, the Blu-ray comes out in
October 30th. They moved it back a little bit.
I don't think I ever really did. If I did, it wasn't with any kind of...
It was the perfect complement to Tim Burton's Batman. They did an animated series, and they even used Danny Elfman's Batman theme for the animated series, and it was just so cool. And
let's be fair here. What made that show more than anything? Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill.
The
two of them made that show.
Still, I would say, the Joker.
Yes.
He is the Joker.
Yes, absolutely.
And he's animated, so that's it. So number 13 on their list is Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Now, I've seen it many times, but that was years ago. I have to watch it again. I have not seen it in years. I just know that it was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I have it number 3 on my list. That shows how much, I loved the movie, and it probably, like the music of it, the ending music with that gothic choir and everything like that, like it's an outstanding movie, and it's a movie I'd almost I would wish they would do a live action, but at the same time, I don't want them to.
It was good enough, though. So for those who don't know, most of these animated films don't come out in theaters. This movie had a full box office release, like any other major animated film that comes out, and I believe did amazing in the box office.
I don't know.
It was fantastic. If you've never seen Batman the Animated Series, highly recommended, as is Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Let's get down to number 12. Time to get the chimichangas. Deadpool. Karyn, when we saw this movie, we were still living in Narberth, and it was I think right before we were moving, and it was I think like during the last 2 weeks of its run, and it was you and me in the theater, and then a 12-year-old boy.
Oh god, yeah, it was like not a very old kid, and we were like, what is this kid doing? It's an R-rated movie. Yeah, it's not something that I would show to a 12-year-old kid, but, your dad probably would.
I saw Pulp Fiction at a very young age.
He had no filter for movies for you.
I mean, this is, for anybody who knows Deadpool and read any Deadpool comics or any animated Deadpool series, they couldn't have done anything any better via casting or filmmaking.
Oh no, Ryan Reynolds was born to play that role. And I mean, I give the man credit in that after X-Men Origins Wolverine, when they basically ruined the
Butchered
character.
him.
I mean, like Ryan Reynolds would have been fully within his right to say, you know what, I'm never touching this character again because it was so terrible. But he loved it that much. And in fact, I believe it was that whole scene when he jumps into the SUV was leaked to the internet because the studio was like, we're not going to make this movie.
The studio said, we're not making the movie, and him and the director, both of them uploaded this scene to the internet, and people were like, give us this movie now.
Yep.
They made it, and now there's 2 of them.
Yeah. I mean, Deadpool's a legitimate franchise at this point. I mean,
And it paved the way for better and more R-rated superhero movies like Logan and Deadpool 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Number 11. Black Panther. T'Challa. Wakanda forever! Now, I have this movie very high at number 4. Karyn, you would have it.
I would as well. It's one of my favorite. It's definitely top 5 for me. I loved Black Panther. There's just so much to it. I mean, just from a female character standpoint, when you look at any movie really, it's rare to find an action-based movie that has multiple female characters that all have their own personalities, that all have their own motivations, that all have parts to play that aren't just, girlfriend, wife, these throwaway side characters are to be rescued, but to have each of them, to have them be able to be badasses in their own right is so amazing to see on film. And it's sad because it's not something you see that much. And so this is, one of the first, superhero movies, probably one of the only ones on this list, even Wonder Woman, where you really have that kind of a situation. And just like the story is great. You know, Michael B. Jordan is such a phenomenal villain. He's so nuanced. He has such an he's got an interesting story, and he's not just, you know, and they pull that bait and switch where you think the villain is going to be, you know, somebody, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, this is the villain? Oh, like it gives you, you know, you have that kind of, you know, bait and switch moment, which I think is great. I love T'Challa. You know, it's
arguably the
so
most
good.
relatable Marvel superhero villain ever. Maybe Thanos, if you're that kind of person. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he's got layers. You know, you develop sympathy for him. You really do. And there's, you know, there are moments where you're like, man.
Not so high on your list.
No, I have it at 22. I liked Black Panther a lot. And, you know, I tell people, like, look, whatever you got out of it, I will never try and take that away from you. I know a lot of minorities love the movie because of how it represents them, and that's great. I have absolutely zero qualms about that and no arguments against that. And, you know, I did like the characters as well. It was a very well-made movie. I also enjoyed the villain and all that. But, I mean, to me, you know, it was a very good movie. You know, I mean, the more I kind of thought about it, the more there was like stuff about it that I wasn't a fan of. That, you know, like, I mean, I like the Suri character. You know, I liked her a lot. And, you know, they made her, she's this very intelligent woman and all that, essentially is responsible for all the technology of Wakanda, but yet she has somehow never heard of sneakers, for example. Like she has access to like all this information.
But it could be argued though that any movie has like some
no, I
bad
get
writing
it.
like
I
that.
get it. And I mean, I'm not, as I said, like it was a very good movie. And as I said, like I know some people, you know, will put it much higher on their list because of what it meant for them personally, and I have nothing against that.
Going to IGN's top 10. And this is one that's not on either of our lists, and we both agree I don't think should be on this list, is Matthew Vaughn's X-Men First Class, the prequel to the X-Men movies. It's a great movie. It is.
Yeah.
I just don't think it belongs on this list. This introduces James McAvoy as Charles Xavier, and Michael Fassbender, who was probably the star more than anyone as Magneto.
Oh, yeah.
Eric Lenscher, so fantastic in the role. Doesn't deserve to be on this list.
I mean, I loved the movie. You know, I kind of had a hard time not putting it on my list. You know, I really enjoyed it. You know, the funny thing is, I haven't really... I mean, I sat through Apocalypse, which I thought was okay. And I haven't seen Days of Future Past, really. I've seen most of it.
You haven't seen the whole thing?
I've seen large chunks of it. I haven't sat down and watched it from beginning to end. And, you know, Michael Fassbender pretty much made the movie for me. And to me, like, honestly, he is Magneto, like the young Magneto.
Yeah.
You know, what Ian McKellen was for the original X-Men franchise, he is for this new one. And honestly, like, I kind of hope that, you know, with Disney now acquiring the 21st Century Fox, or you know, that they'll keep him in the fold. And even James McAvoy, who I actually felt made a good Charles Xavier.
The problem I have with this being on the list is not that one of these movies on the list. I feel like it's the wrong movie. If anything, I have it at number 12 on my list, is Days of Future Past. I relate Days of Future Past, and Karyn, you've seen Days of Future, I think a couple of times. I relate Days of Future Past with Infinity War. These are two of the biggest comic book stories of all time, and they found ways, two different studios, to make it work and make it work well. Like it's not number 12 for no reason. I think it is top 15 worthy. Days of Future Past was just magnificent.
Yeah, I mean, you have, you know, the convergence of, you know, the old and the new, and it's an interesting story and it's exciting. I might put the original, First Class on my list, kind of low on the list, but But I thought it was, I thought it was a good movie. I thought it was a good start to a, kind of a change in the franchise. It's better than a lot of the older X-Men movies.
And one thing I will give First Class is, honestly, and I was surprised at how much I liked Kevin Bacon's villain.
He was a good villain.
And I read, when I read about what his character's abilities actually are in the comics, where I think he grows big when he absorbs energy, I was like, okay, they did something way cooler with his abilities in the movie.
We are at number 9, and I have this movie a lot lower on my list, and that is Captain America. Well, not a lot lower, but lower. Captain America Civil War, where I would still say it shouldn't have been a Captain America movie. It should have been an Avengers movie.
Well, yeah.
It's good. It's not as good as any of the... Well, it's as good as some of the others, but I think it's overhyped sometimes. You have it, I think, a lot.
No, higher. Because as I said, I was trying to stick.
That's right.
Pick one movie from franchise. So, between this and obviously another Captain America movie, I went with Winter Soldier, because between the two of them, I loved Civil War, loved it to death, but I felt Winter Soldier was just a little bit better. Just by a little bit, not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Civil War from an Avengers movie standpoint is not, I don't think is as high on my list as some of the other Avengers movies. I think it's a good movie. I like that, you get that battle scene with Spider-Man and Ant-Man, and is that...
Yeah.
You're right. I mix them up in my head sometimes because I've seen so many of them. But that's a really fun scene. It's a hard one, because there's so many Avengers movies, and there's they're all relatively good. I'd probably maybe put it a little higher than Age of Ultron.
I mean, I'll be honest, if I were to put Civil War on my list, it would very easily be top 10, probably top 5.
Interesting. Going to number 8, we were talking about how Tim Burton's Batman did for superhero movies back then. Well, this did it for now, and that is the first ever Marvel Cinematic movie, that is Iron Man.
I mean, Iron Man is it's a classic movie because obviously it kickstarted the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe, and obviously it was the revelation that Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark. Honestly, whenever Robert Downey Jr. passes away, they're probably going to carve Tony Stark into his headstone.
I am Iron Man.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
I think you just put an arc reactor.
Yeah.
That's it. Just a little...
But honestly, I didn't have Iron Man on my list because I felt that Obadiah Stane was a very weak villain. The whole Ironmonger and everything, I they were still kind of finding their way with the first Iron Man movie. And honestly, my biggest thing with most superhero comic book movies, whatever you'd like to call them, is the villain has to be good. The villain is what makes the hero's journey interesting. If you have a really great hero, because tell me about the first 2 Thor movie villains. Tell me anything about them.
Dark Elf and Loki.
Yeah, and and Loki is fine, but
But I mean, it was Loki, but it was also the weird Asgardian champion thing with the flaming head. But not exactly rememberable. I would disagree about Obadiah Stane, just because you're right, he's not the greatest villain in the world, but that movie wasn't made for the villain. It was made to introduce us to Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark.
Yeah,
it did that and then some.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, it really kicked off.
How wowed were we? I mean, this is years ago now, 10 years ago. But I mean,
watching it and just being like, yeah, and
it was better than it had any right to be.
Oh yeah.
And then at the end, especially, and this is for anybody listening. This is the clip I wanted to put. One of the clips I wanted. I chose the Tony Stark Avengers one instead. But after the credits, when Nick Fury's broken into Tony Stark's house, and he's like, I'm here to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative. And you're like, here we go. Yes. Here we go. Number 7. Literally watched this an hour ago. Yeah. Logan. Top 10 for me at number 10. Matt, you hadn't seen it yet, so it wasn't on your list.
I didn't put it on my list because I hadn't seen it yet. I enjoyed it. It would most certainly make my list. I'd have to kind of sit down and figure out where it would fall in my list. Probably, a top 10, I'm sure. So...
It's just such a well-made film.
It's a film. It's not a movie.
It is a film, yeah. I mean, it reminds me of, of The Dark Knight in the same way, because it doesn't feel like a superhero movie. It feels like a film, and it's really made in such a way that, it's beautifully shot, and it has the acting. I mean, Patrick Stewart is...
I said this while we were watching it. I still think
good.
that Patrick Stewart should have been at least nominated, maybe shouldn't have won, but nominated for an Oscar for his portrayal of a very old and basically who has dementia, Charles Xavier.
Yeah, and it's just everything about it. It's just so gut-wrenching. There's so many points in that movie that are just like, oh. And, it's hard to watch sometimes. It's that kind of good.
For the violence factor alone.
Well, the violence factor and just, there are deaths in that movie that are really, they're really difficult. And it's so well done. And it's hard to put in a category, I think, with other superhero movies, just because it really does feel so different.
Out of everything on this list, it stands apart. It stands alone, almost as not. It's hard to actually call it a superhero movie. Yes, he does superhuman things and has these superhuman powers, but I don't know. It's like a Western heist, coming of age, weird. It's just so different. James Mangold's a
survivalist.
Number 6. We're the Guardians of the Galaxy. I have this at number 8. This is another one that had no right to work, and it did.
Yes.
Yeah, I honestly didn't have it on my list, not because I didn't love the movie, but just because there were other things that I loved more. And honestly, between the two of them, I would probably go with, I like the second one a little bit more, because I felt that, the journey was more personal for Peter Quill, for Star-Lord. And, I love both movies, do not get me wrong, but, as I said, it might have been more of an oversight on my part to not put it on my list, but...
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it didn't really have any right to be as good as it was. I remember hearing that there was going to be a Guardians of the Galaxy, and I was like, what the hell is that?
Well, and me too, because I think I'm the biggest comic book reader here. Karyn, you read comics as well, but even I never read a single Guardians of the Galaxy book, so I was like,
Yeah,
and then
they took this sort of oddball collection of characters in these comics and made it into something, really phenomenal. I mean, it's such a fun movie. The characters are so much fun. It's even got some poignant moments. I mean, I liked the second one as well, and it had some really great moments. I think I liked the first one a little bit more.
I liked the first one a little bit more as well, yeah.
But the second one also had, definitely had some really fun moments. Toddler Groot is one of my favorite things ever, because especially having had a toddler, that's a toddler. Like, whoever created that scene was like, yeah, this is my child.
And Guardians also, I mean, is such an important part of the MCU, because it opens up all of the interstellar, space stuff in the world, which is very important to Infinity War, which obviously we are going to get to. We are into the top 5 on IGN, and they have number 5 being Batman Begins, which is not on my list.
I don't have it on mine.
No, it's number 16 on my list, so a lot lower. I mean, it's good. It's really good, but it was a work in progress.
I don't think it's top 5 good.
No, I mean, once again, between the two of them, I chose The Dark Knight, and Batman Begins is a fine movie. It's nothing really wrong with it. Gary Oldman as Gordon,
Commissioner Gordon,
works well. And I feel like it was Christian Bale kind of feeling out the role. Kind of like, what kind of Bruce Wayne Batman is he gonna be? And I mean, I like the movie a lot, but yeah.
And Michael Caine makes just a lovable Alfred.
Oh.
Number 4, and this is where it starts, at least on my list, to all kind of merge together. It just one up on my list is The Avengers. The first one where we get the whole team is one. We have that clip. The Avengers, little group we call ourselves. Just an amazing movie. And Matt, you and I just got the 4K steelbooks.
Yep.
Did you end up getting a chance to watch it?
I have not. I've been catching up on other stuff, but funny enough, I also have Avengers at number 4, the first Avengers movie. So I pretty much matched up perfectly with the list with IGN on that one. I mean, let's be fair, that the moment when the camera does the full circle around the team with the Avengers theme going and everything, that was built up to for years. I mean, pretty much like it was nerd heaven at that point.
It is. And top, again, we were talking about some of the top moments or movies of all time. These kind of movies, that's definitely a top 3 moment in superhero movies of all time. You talk about these movies as we get higher up the list that had no business working. You know, they tried to put superheroes together in movies, and you put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then some, you know, players who aren't in the main cast. This movie's amazing. It's amazing. It just, everything about it. This movie doesn't take one bad step, and if you watch it again in 4K, it's like watching it in the movies. Just tremendous. I think there's no arguing. Yeah. I think it should be in a top 3. 4's good, but top 3 better. Speaking of the top 3, I think one we all agree has no business being on this list, and that is the first ever 1978 Superman movie.
I'll be the first to admit it's been years since I watched the original Superman, and Christopher Reeve is iconic as Superman. He is still, when I picture Superman, that's who comes into my mind. You know, even if I rewatch the movie, I feel it wouldn't be a top 10 one for me. You know, I mean, there's a lot of iconic things. The theme alone is, you know, I mean, most people, when you play that theme, they know Superman right off the bat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I mean, just, you know, quick sidebar, my mother actually met Christopher Reeve when she was flying years ago, and he was just as wonderful and gracious a person as you could believe him to be, you know, playing Superman.
There's no doubt that he is Superman, right? There's no doubt that he's Superman. But this, I've seen it recently. It's good. It's a 1978 superhero movie. It's as good as it can be. Richard Donner, Superman 2, where they introduced Zod and that character, is just such a better movie. If they wanted to put it on this list, it just shouldn't even be in the top 10, though.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a nostalgia pick and not...
Especially with one that's a huge omission that we're going to talk about at the end of the show. Number 2, and this is my number 1 favorite superhero movie of all time. Nothing will change my mind unless the new Avengers does something absolutely amazing. Captain America, The Winter Soldier.
I also have it number 2 on my list. So, you know, I mean, it's... Winter Soldier, in my opinion, perfectly did this whole, you know, this... It was almost... It was a superhero movie, but it was also like a spy thriller.
It is spy thriller first, superhero movie
it's
second.
Another of those movies that kind of defies the genre and is, you know, is a better movie than, you know...
It's more of a film than a movie.
It's more of a film than a movie. Yeah, than a superhero movie. Yeah, absolutely.
As of this recording, I am lucky enough to tomorrow be going to see this at noon in IMAX, so I get to see it again in theaters. I'm so excited. It just did everything well. You know, Steve Rogers, you know, with this, all of a sudden, you know, do I stay with my country? Do I go and find the truth? You know, a huge moment of conflict for him, and just all of the spy stuff, and who do you trust? And then the revelation of Hydra and how that shapes the whole MCU after that. It's not just, it affects everything from here on out, from TV to movies. It was amazing, and
it was such a turning point.
I mean, you just see that scene where Steve first sees Bucky for the first time, when he's like, Buck? And he's like, who the hell is Buck? Like, it's just such an emotional... This movie hit all the right points, and more than A Dark Knight for me, which is on IGN's list at number 1, and I can't argue with The Dark Knight being number 1.
I mean... Honestly, you know, and my number 1 is Avengers Infinity War, you know, because as I said before, like the villain makes the hero and makes the movie. And for me, what kind of lowers The Dark Knight is Christian Bale as Batman. He does that over raspy, harsh, guttural voice whenever he talks. Where are the drugs? Where's everything going? And it's... And the thing is
kind of my one complaint about Christian Bale.
Yeah, and I mean, and just comparing him to Michael Keaton, like Michael Keaton, like talked darker, but it was like that type of thing where if he were a real person and you heard him talk, you'd be like, "There's," you know, you might be like, "That sounds familiar," but there's no way that's Bruce Wayne because you know, Bruce Wayne's a billionaire who dates Playboy models and stuff like that. Like he wouldn't be doing this stuff.
I'm in the minority, and I actually, for God knows what reason, love the raspy voice. It didn't. It didn't bother me. They were like, lie to me, and like that stuff. Like I don't know. It just like it was like ethereal and like I really liked it. we've been talking about this for the past few because a lot of these movies are so good at doing it. It breaks from the genre. It's hard to say this because Batman is in the movie and you have a crazy villain. The Dark Knight is not a superhero movie. It is a crime thriller. It is a crime thriller.
Oh, yeah.
And it should have been nominated for Best Picture. And, I mean, it won an Oscar. Heath Ledger did win for Best Supporting Actor. I mean, I don't think they gave it to him just because he died. This movie, the role was amazing. The movie was amazing. It deserves the top spot at number 1. I just have a soft spot for Winter Soldier. I don't know. I love The Dark Knight.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, it's a fantastic movie. I mean, I think it's a fantastic movie because of Heath Ledger as the Joker. I mean, I remember seeing it in theaters, and the whole scene when he walks in on the mobsters and he shoves the pencil on the table and he shoves the guy's face. I remember the entire theater just broke into applause and cheering and everything because that scene just showed you right away that he was dangerous, he was funny. You know, he was all the things the Joker is supposed to be. And it was like, I mean, that's when, if I was at that meeting and I watched this dude just shove some guy's face into a pencil and kill him instantly, and he just kind of jokes about it, like, I'd be like, okay, this dude is not to be messed with. He's not to be trifled with.
It's almost more of a Joker movie than a Batman movie. I mean, I almost wonder if they didn't name it Batman, Batman whatever, in part because it's not quite a Batman. Like, it's more... the villain makes it more than the hero does. But it's so good.
And probably one of the best things they didn't explain the Joker's backstory.
No.
They basically, like, he lied to everybody. There was always that, oh, my father did it. Oh, okay, his father did it. Like,
every single time.
And that was
real mad.
That was their little,
and you have no idea who he is.
Yeah, and that was their little subtle nod to the comics, where I believe one of his famous quotes is like, "I feel that in your personal history, it's best to have multiple choice," or something like that. And that's Joker right there. That was perfect. So.
Before we wrap up here, we spent a lot of time on these and we are out of time, but we have to spend a little bit more. Of the biggest omission from this list, Infinity War is nowhere to be seen.
Now, that could be depending upon when did this list come out? I don't have the date for it.
It came out on, let's see.
Well, it's going to come. It came out like a week ago,
a week or two ago. It was on
like
August 17th.
Okay, yeah, that is a huge omission because, as I said, I have Infinity War number 1, mainly because of the fact that Infinity War is the original Avengers movie, and they basically gave it steroids and pumped it up. And the fact that you have all these moving parts, all these big name actors, all these all these like characters and all that, and they're in the movie together and it works. And honestly, and the fact that, like, I remember sitting in the theaters and at no point did I get bored.
Nope.
Did I think, like, God, like, they could have cut this could have been edited and everything. And the fact that they gave Thanos a very sympathetic backstory. Even my wife...
Star of the movie.
Oh, yeah. And my wife and I walking out of the movie, my wife even said to me, she's like, as dark as it is, like, you can kind of see Thanos' point and how valid it has, and some validity. So
Karyn does not share our opinion.
I'm going to be the minority here. I was pissed at the end of Infinity War, honestly. Like, when I see the two halves together, there probably will be a point where I'm like, all right, I like these two as a whole. But as a first half, it felt rushed to me. It felt like too much at once. I thought that the ending was cheap. I thought that it was shock value, and that
it absolutely was.
Why? I felt like
I think you could still have shock value and have those moments still have meaning and feel something
cheap
for them.
Shock value that meant nothing.
How do you know? There's a chance that some of these characters don't come back.
Well, some maybe, but
I think that the characters most at risk are the ones that survived. And that's
but isn't that the story? Isn't that the story? It is about these original Avengers: Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk,
it is, but
Black Widow.
there were things that I liked about the movie that I thought were really great, but there were things that I felt like were rushed.
More power, Rabbit.
That's one of the things I loved about the movie. Thor and the Guardians together is such a fun combination, and I thought that was great, and I loved that. I wish that there had been more of other things, and I'm hoping that it comes in the next movie. Tony and Cap together, I think there wasn't as much of that as I wanted. I just feel like, and like I said, as a whole, when the second half comes out, I may go, wow, I really love these two together because, they make each other whole. But I honestly sat in that theater and I was pissed.
I remember. We barely talked about the movie on the car ride home.
Because you wanted to talk about it, and I was like, I think it was cheap. I think it was shock value. I didn't think that it was. And having stepped away from it, I understand it. I get what they were doing. I get what they were going for. I still don't love it, and I don't think. There were moments in it that I really loved, but as a whole, I didn't think that it made a cohesive movie. I felt like it was just a lot of things jumbled together that then kind of came to a head at the end, and then it was like shock value, and and now there's the anticipation of what's gonna be, how are they gonna solve this? Obviously it's not gonna stay that way.
Well,
I know.
The impact is lessened a little bit when you know that certain characters who, got turned into ash have sequel movies coming out.
That's the thing. You go to the end of the movie and you're like, well, what was the point of that death? Because clearly they're not actually dead.
Well, they are, though. They are dead. They're not in the Soul Stone. They are dead for the time being.
Yeah.
And the producers and the directors are making that a point. They're saying, these characters, maybe not. There
have been contracts signed. There's no way they're not making another Black Panther movie. There's no way they're not making another Spider-Man movie.
That there has been zero word or talk on a Doctor Strange 2. Just saying. And he did.
And that's not 100% surprising. Doctor Strange was good, but it wasn't amazing. But that wasn't something that broke me up. I wasn't so broken up. Now the very end, the little teaser with Nick Fury got me very excited. Big Captain Marvel fan. Carol Danvers is my girl. And I'm super excited that finally I can go out with my Captain Marvel purse and people will recognize it after her movie comes out. Because right now I get the, wow, that's a cool Wonder Woman purse. It's not Wonder Woman, it's Captain Marvel. I'm excited that people are going to actually learn about Captain Marvel, not just the Captain, not just the comic book people, but, she's going to go into the mainstream because I think she is such a good character. And I think she needs to happen. Marvel needs more strong woman characters. I'm going to put my feminist hat on for a second. They need to, give justice to more strong women.
Well, and a Black Widow film is down the line.
And a Black Widow film finally is down the line, which, we've been waiting for a very long time, that people have been, asking for. And I think they're finally starting to realize with the success of Wonder Woman and with the success of Black Panther and, that they're like, oh, maybe we should actually make movies about this. Maybe we should make movies with women in them. So, yeah, I'm excited. And I'm excited to see what she does in the next Infinity War because she's going to, be obviously integral to that,
Absolutely.
that plot. So, you've got Captain Marvel coming out and then Infinity War after, so.
No, I think I've already talked enough.
We talked for a very long time on this, and the biggest question remains, do you agree with us? Do you not agree with us? We want to know. Let us know. Talk about it on Facebook. You can tweet at us at PermittedPod. You can email us at permittedpod@gmail.com. Stick around later this week. We will be streaming some Spider-Man PS4 on our new Twitch channel. You can find the link to that in this episode as well. And then stick around for our third episode, which will be on September 18th. Thanks for joining us on this very long yet exciting Top 25 Superhero Breakdown. We had fun. We hope you did too. Have a good night.
By rocket to the moon, by airplane to the rocket, by taxi to the airport.